I am delighted to welcome all of you to this amazing webinar titled Multiple Location Mastery, 5 Principles to Grow a Group Practice. We have Darin Acopan from the Dentist Entrepreneur Organization with us. He's their VP of Business Development. He's been in dentistry for over 5 years and has helped in his past life, helped an amazing multi-million-dollar company scale. So really, truly excited to have you guys on board. Some housekeeping things before we start. We've placed everybody listening to on mute, but we definitely want your questions. So please use the chat box at the bottom to ask your questions. We'll be happy to answer them as fast as we possibly can. But Darin, we're excited to really talk about the talk of the town, the talk of the industry, which is growing your group practice, scaling your organization. And in our opinion, in my personal opinion, there's no better organization today that grooms the next generation of dental leaders to really achieve the growth and the scale that they desire to maintain the lifestyle that they want to desire. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to you and have you start this webinar by talking about the DEO a little bit and talking about a little bit about yourself. Let's get going.
Perfect. Thanks, Amol. First and foremost, we appreciate the partnership with Patient Prism. And thanks again for all of you on the call, whether it's Pacific Standard or Eastern Standard. Really appreciate you being here tonight and sharing your time with us. And so again, I am Darin Acopan. I am the VP of Business Development for the Dentist Entrepreneur Organization. For those of you that aren't familiar with us, we are a group that was really designed to serve this niche, and that niche was 80% of owners are single location, and the majority of consultants and awesome organizations really serve that niche, the 80%. And then you have the very large groups that I won't name any of them, but they really have their network, and typically they like to talk to you if you're at the $20-25 million in annual revenue mark. And so everyone in the middle that was either one location scaling to their second, or they had a group of locations scaling beyond that, really was left to their own devices, and they felt like they were on their own island. And so the DEO was an organization that was developed to really provide education and connectivity to those group practice owners that really wanted to learn how to scale without getting off the rails, if you will. And so that being the case, before we jump into these 5 principles, I really want to say, if you can relate to these statements, 1 or all 4, then it's very normal. So, you have months where you worry exactly about what is the best way to grow, what are the potential pitfalls, and a lot of times that causes people to not take action. I talk to people on a weekly basis that have been at one location for 20 years because they've been too scared to scale. Sure. You also think production and quality might suffer. You're in the chair less, you're having associates run the day-to-day production. How are they going to be able to produce what you can produce? And that scares people from scaling. And then you're also concerned with quality control. If I scale too large, then there's not going to be any quality of care. And then the communication is going to just implode if I have more than 1 or 2 locations. And that's a real concern out there. And then, how am I going to balance my chairside production with managing the business? And then I have a family on top of that. I just don't think there are enough hours in the day, and I don't know if it's worth it. So if you can relate to 1 or if not all of these, the good news is you're not alone. I hear this all the time. A lot of people are going through the same mentality, and it's not you. The reality is when you take a look at the dental industry, it's consolidating. And so Emmett Scott, he's on DSO Secrets, and one of our faculty members, he has a really great saying. He says, growing a group practice is like you have the perfect plot of land to build your dream home, and there's not a Home Depot or a Lowe's in sight. And so you have to build that Home Depot and Lowe's and build your dream house at the same time. And it's kind of like changing the wheels on a car while it's in motion. And so, Amol, you've gone through this consolidation effect in dental. What are your thoughts on what's going on right now?
I mean, it's happening. It's here to stay. Whether we like it or not, we have to embrace what's happening in the space. A lot of, as you say here, in private equity is coming into the space. There's a lot of business owners that are not in dental that are coming inside of dental to kind of invest because they see it as a great sector. And what it's doing is it's really helping, I think, an entire industry kind of look inside and inward into all the areas from technology to insurance to HR. And it really is, I think, making the industry grow a little bit faster, but also helping them to really understand and appreciate some of the problems that they have faced as they grow their businesses. So really, consolidation is here to stay, and I think it's only going to increase over the next decade at least. We don't know after that, but definitely it's here to stay.
Absolutely. And not only is it consolidating, it's operationalizing. And so that's really where Patient Prism comes into play. You created your platform out of necessity. You were sick and tired of seeing opportunities fall by the wayside. And so you created your Patient Prism platform because of that. You know, with us, go ahead.
Operational, it really is, because now all of a sudden we have to think about all aspects of our business, and we have to optimize every aspect of our business, because consolidation is forcing, it's creating competitive environment where now dentists have to compete, not just with the corner, with a few people, but in Tampa, for example, we've got like 15 dentists on every corner, including corporate groups, individual groups. So if you don't think about operations and optimizing every element of it, optimizing the journey of the patient, and that's part of the place we play in, is optimizing the journey of the patient coming into your offices. You're not going to be able to compete, at least, and not going to be able to rely on that source of income you had in the past, because other folks around you are operationalizing, and they're looking at optimizing these buckets that you show here really well. So point on, absolutely, great.
Fantastic. And so, you know, the keys to solving problems really come down to the people and the process in your business. It's really, you know, people and process, and then synergizing those together. And so what do I mean by people issues? So if you look at the left-hand column, you know, are you hiring only A+ players? I can tell you the majority of folks that I talk to, and even members in the DEO, typically what happens is they hire opportunistically after someone puts in their notice. And therefore you're stuck with whatever you get, and the best of the worst. And then what are you doing then if you do have A+ players to develop leaders in the organization so that they want to stay with you and you're the employer of choice rather than leave to go to a competitor? You know, who do you hire next? How quickly do you scale? When do you hire and who do you hire? You know, I think you have some experience in speaking to some of the members that you have, as far as they say, what, hire ahead of your needs, right?
Absolutely. And hire ahead of your growth, for sure. Because you want to kind of have the infrastructure ready to be able to accept growth in your organization. And if you don't have that, then things quickly fall apart. The other thing I like about this slide a lot is when you're hiring A+ players, it's really important to understand that you may have to pay more for that A+ players, and sometimes it's going to have a hit on your bottom line, and your P&L is going to look a little bit worse off in the short run. But you've got to believe that the A+ player is going to be an asset, an investment. It's a balance sheet item, although it shows up on your P&L. So that's something that I definitely see as I talk to CEOs of various DSOs across the country. A+ players is really, really crucial to getting going, you know?
Absolutely. And then from a process standpoint, you know, are you going to be an acquisition growth model? Are you going to be a de novo scratch start model? What KPIs do you look at? How do you obtain financing, right? There's that big rumor of once I get to a certain debt service, I'm going to get cut off from my traditional debt financing. You know, right. How do you increase profitability per location? And then how do you standardize the patient experience? I'm sure you see this all the time when you're integrating with businesses.
And the reason processes are important, because as emerging groups are coming about and becoming larger and scaling their operations, and they're inviting new money, private equity or elsewhere strategic money, what the investors are looking for is your processes, right? And they're looking whether the processes have created what they call a platform. And you can't really create a platform without processes. So if you're looking to exit or take some money off the table with using those high multiples that we talk about, EBITDA, you have to have processes that have built a platform, because what investors love today is you having a platform which they can scale, and it's consistent and repeatable processes that can be easily scaled up when they come in as an investor. So point on, great points about people and processes.
Absolutely. And so with the principles I'm going to go over in this presentation, I want you to leave feeling like, you're not going to make a big mistake with this decision scale. You're not going to feel like you're over your head anymore. And I know this isn't what you learned in dental school. We hear that all the time. That's just the way it is. Now, you don't want to reinvent the wheel either. The more you can learn from others that have been there and done that and maybe are 2 and 3 steps ahead of you, the better off you'll be. And then, less sacrificing of family time, more choice about when you're in the chair and what procedures you're performing while you're chairside, and then less chaos and more balance in managing both the clinical and the business side of your practices. And so what is the DEO again? So a lot of folks ask, well, what is the DEO? How did it get started? It really is a cross-section of who myself and my partners feel are the really premier emerging groups. Typically, your average DEO member is about 5 to 6 locations, and they're doing about 5 to 7 million in annual revenues. You have some that are smaller than that, some that are a lot larger than that. And then we have a faculty group that sits on top of the DEO. We're not a DSO. We don't own these practices. Whenever someone asks why, I say because I can't get 10 owners to even agree on the same bonding agent. There's no way you would get 300 to agree on the same exit strategy. And the other thing is there's just freedom of choice. Again, we were created out of necessity because no one was really servicing several years ago. When you go from 1 to 2 and then from 2 to 20, what do you do next? And so it's a group that's about 120 members. The 120 members, the majority, I would say 95% of them are the dentist owner founders of the groups. And then the other remaining percentage are their C-level executives that are affiliated with one of our members. Sure. And so aggregate revenues are about $600 million, and it's 430 practice locations that are represented in the DEO, and it continues to grow. So that being the case, all of our content and what I'm going to share with everyone tonight comes from the group itself. So that's the efficacy behind the claims. Now, let's start off with 5 principles. So principle number 1, there are many right ways to scale. So I've been to a lot of conferences, Amol, you've been to a lot of conferences. Sometimes you leave with a binder. Sometimes you leave with a flash drive and it says, this is how to do it. This is the blueprint. Here's the secret sauce. Go forward and scale. And the reality is that's just one way. There's probably hundreds, if not thousands of ways to do it. And at the end of the day, let me ask you this. Should you use debt to finance your growth? Should you use your own cash and bootstrap your growth, or should you go to private equity? What do you think?
It depends, right? It depends, and no one answer is the right answer. A lot of groups that I've seen, they sometimes start initially with cash, and then they realize quickly that debt's essential because it's a great way to finance growth. There's some amazing financial institutions right now in the dental space that have a lot of experience in lending to your specific group types. A combination of 2 usually is what happens initially, debt and cash, the bootstrap. And then as you develop a platform and as you develop some processes and hire good people, private equity starts getting interested in kind of helping you get to the next level. So there's no good way, but I think sometimes you can be having all 3 things at the same time. And you're right, there's no one right answer to finance your growth.
Absolutely. And I'll give you an example. So these are 3 of our DEO faculty members that did it differently. So Dr. Rich Evangelista has 40 plus locations in California. Yes. And he's only used debt financing. So he's gone well beyond that $5 million cap. And so there are ways, if you're able to convey your story and what your long-term game plan is, to secure debt financing to scale. Dr. A.J. Oserno, who many of you know on the call from Decision One Dental, he used cash. He bootstrapped his growth prior to his affiliation with Smile Brands recently. And then you've got Emmett Scott, who took on private equity before they hit 10 locations. And so all 3 used different models to scale their growth. Now, another question is, how do I set up associate buy-ins? If I want to keep my associates happy, I'm going to have them have skin in the game and have them have an equity stake. So Amal, what do you think? No buy-in? Buy-in at the top level with the DSO level or at the practice level?
I mean, we've seen it all, right? We've seen successful models in all three different um, types of choices. Although I see a more of a movement towards associate buy-in. We're seeing a lot of DSOs realizing that providing some skin in the game is going to achieve two things. One, it's going to help with the retention. And the second thing it's going to help with is just productivity. Studies have been done by these internally from DSOs where you've seen associates that have some skin in the game produce over 20-25% more than who don't. So that's an interesting trend that I see in associate ownership. I'm not sure what you guys are seeing more on your side.
Got it. And I'll show you. So Dr. Sulman Ahmed is a faculty member of ours. No buy-ins at Decadental. And we have another member that's in California with 7 locations that only allows buy-ins at the DSO level. He believes in ultimate transparency, and that way it's a lot easier to get owners to fill in for one another because they have skin in the game at the DSO level. When you go to Mississippi, we have another DEO member at 2 locations that only wants associate buy-ins at the practice level. So really, again, just like the securing financing, how do you set up associate buy-ins? They're all different.
Right, absolutely. I mean, and the buy-ins can come in many forms. Sometimes it can be an economic ownership without the legal ownership. So there's many ways to structure that, and there's amazing lawyers who can help you do that.
Absolutely. Now, you and I go to a lot of conferences, and we don't think it's the number of locations, but what is the first question someone asks you after they ask you where you're from? How many locations do you have, right?
Right, that's right.
How often do you hear that question at a summit?
Every single time. They ask me too, and I don't even own any locations.
Exactly.
How many you got?
Exactly. Exactly. And the reality is, if you have 3 group practices, each doing 10 million in top line revenue, one has 7 locations, the next has 3, and the third has 8. Based on this number of locations narrative, it's the one with 8 that seems to be the best. But at the DEO, we would say, what is your profit? What is your profit for the group, right? And then from there, at the end of the day, the profitability is really, at the end of the day, what matters. That's what a private equity group is going to take a look at, is your EBITDA, right? And location count is a little bit arbitrary at that point. You know, some other profitability measures that some of our members in the DEO look at for their own groups are, what are the number of operatories per location? What is the production per operatory? And, you know, what are the number of employees? More employees doesn't necessarily mean a better DSO. It just means more overhead. But can you justify, again, spending money ahead of time on A+ players in lieu of B and C players? Because at the end of the day, the B and C players can only help you scale to a certain level, and you're probably going to have to force attrition anyway. And so, any comments on that?
Well, it's a great point. I mean, as we talk to DSO groups across the country as they become customers of Patient Prism, we're amazed at how some of these 2-3 location DSOs are just killing it, absolutely killing it in terms of all the metrics, not only on the EBITDA side, but just they built an amazing platform only with 3 locations, and they're doing something that even 40 location groups cannot accomplish. So right on point. I believe in that, and I didn't when I started this journey, but now having seen how some of these guys have done it with 2 or 3 locations. We have a client, obviously I won't say the name, but we share between DEO and Patient Prism, who is the epitome of running a successful group with 3 locations and just doing something that even in 20-25 locations have not been able to do.
Absolutely. So that moves us to principle 3, which is, growth and scale can be your path to freeing your time up. So what do I mean by that? Your standard operating procedures, delegation, allowing you to work your way out of the chair or to just work on the procedures you want is crucial. And so when you look at your biggest bottlenecks as owners, what's eating up the most time? And if you solve that issue first, what is it that's going to basically allow you to spend 20% of your time but get 80% of the results? And then you just rinse and repeat. And I'm sure as you've scaled up Patient Prism yourself, Amol, you've gone through this as well, as far as figuring out you can't do it yourself. You have to delegate.
The time is what I've realized, not with myself, but in talking to the executives at the DSO level, is time is your biggest scarce resource. And creating that time and allowing yourself to work on your business instead of in your business makes all the difference. And that's why delegation is important. I mean, I, as a founder, right, all of us are we like to control everything, especially when we're starting a small business. And that tendency is persistent, and you have to fight it every single day. The tendency to control everything, because as you grow from one location to 2 to 3, you're not able to touch everybody. You're not able to talk to every team member. So if you don't delegate and create peoples and processes, as you said earlier, and create SOPs, you're not going to be able to scale appropriately. You're not going to be able to solve every single problem. You have to trust somebody else to solve it. And I have learned, I mean, and sometimes I've made the mistake of not delegating fast enough, because I knew I was the only one who could do it better. And then I realized that, oh my goodness, when the folks that around me can make me better, I can focus on growing my business. And that's been one of the big lessons that I've learned from even going to your shows, is how to effectively hire the right people, delegate, build SOPs, and create time for yourself to work on your business.
Absolutely. I mean, at a certain point when you scale, you're going to be working, you're going to have people reporting to you that have people reporting to them that work with the frontline patients. And it's just not possible to be at all places at the same time. And you and I chatted earlier today about, why are you working on $10 or $20 an hour tasks when you can easily delegate that out to someone else on your team that probably enjoys it more than you do and is better at it than you are? Now, look at it from a marketing standpoint. You got some group practice owners that have 10 locations that still want to do the SEO themselves. Right. It's just not a good use of your time at that point. So I totally agree with you as well. Now, people are more important than processes. And that's principle 4. And I know your motto, everyone knows, is people before profits. And at the end of the day, I can't stress this enough. Really, really focusing on that leadership team. I see too many group practice owners, even at 5 to 10 locations, try to do it themselves without really forming a leadership team. And if something were to happen to them as the owner founder, they would be in a really bad situation. And so really, figuring out who's your leadership team. If you can't grow them homegrown and level them up, then you're going to have to go externally. And I know you've done that to get some of your key team members in Patient Prism, right?
Right.
Can you talk about your experience?
Absolutely. I mean, at every point in your journey, you realize that there are things that you're limited by, right? You can be the best at marketing. There's no way. You have some idea about how to market, but there are people who are best in the world at that. And Jim Collins, Good to Great is one of the favorite books that I've ever read. And he talks about, where do you want to kind of, what place you want to be in. It's the hedgehog principle, where what do you be best in the world at, what drives your economic engine, and what are you most passionate about? I am passionate about building relationships, and really I enjoy sharing what I have learned with other people, but I'm not most passionate about marketing. I'm not most passionate about sales. I'm not most passionate about HR. And I know that's important for me, because without those elements working together, there's no way I can succeed. And so the key, I think the scary part is, as a founder, I can tell you, the scary part is how much it's going to cost me. A team is great. And I have to really, really figure that out myself and say, you know what, I'm ready to invest in people. Because without people, I cannot build processes, and without processes, I cannot build platforms. And without platforms, I cannot build the DSO of my dreams. It really is people, processes, and platforms that it starts with people, though. I agree.
And speaking of A players, I remember when Patient Prism, you and your co-founder were getting it off the ground. safe
Yes.
to say you didn't always have A players on your team.
Absolutely. I did
What,
make mistakes. Absolutely.
what was the gain when you hired your first A player compared to when you had B and C players potentially?
Well, I realized what I achieved was time. Um, the time that for me to spend thinking about how I wanted to grow my business. What do I need to work on that I was really good at? And so what happened is when I got busy, when I was in busy work, doing busy work, my brain really could not have any more thoughts about growing my business or strategically thinking about that. As a CEO of a dental practice or a software company, you got to think about not just what's happening immediately, but what's going to happen 1, 2, 3 years from now and where you want to be. And that's what helped me. It helped me kind of declutter my mind so I could inject more strategic thinking in my approach and not just tactical stuff, which kind of solved the immediate problem and basically putting out fires. And all of us do that. I still do that to this day, but there's more people now handling that. So it gives me just the luxury of time is the best luxury ever. As we all know today, it's like we just need time.
Absolutely. And then that third thing is really creating an incredible culture. So I'm not saying get a leadership team and all A players and they're all jerks. I'm saying be the employer of choice, but create a culture that is phenomenal and that everyone wants to be a part of, but that really does take A players and then a leadership team being 100% in alignment through thick and thin. And, you know, a hiring system creates the leverage here. This is what's lacking in most organizations. Would you agree with this, Amol? You've encountered these organizations that they tend to tell you, the owners, I can't find any good people.
Right, absolutely. And I think there's always a system. There's always a better way to do things better. Sometimes we just think that we can do it ourselves. And I've been in that spot where I thought that I can just do it based on gut. And to this day, I struggle with it. But the system is important. And when we have adopted a system where it's more systematic, where we've done job descriptions, where we have focused on the profile of the person, looked at personalities and looked at some of that stuff, that system has enabled us to really get the right people on the bus.
Absolutely. And so from a hiring system standpoint, this is what we've codified at the DEO is, you know, at the end of the day, people make the process. So if you have garbage in, you get garbage out. And the majority of individuals that I see in the dental space have on-the-job training, especially for the non-clinical, especially for one of the most important positions in the office, which is the front desk. And at the end of the day, if that person is trained by someone, then you're only as good as that person. And there's no quality assurance that what that person learned from whoever trained them was exactly what the owner operator wanted in terms of patient experience. And so this is what we've codified, is it comes down to, you know, your personal contacts and, you know, your job position marketing. So ultimately, you know, just like you get patient referrals, some of your best employees come from employee referrals internally. If you go to Indeed, if you have to go to LinkedIn and Dental Post to get jobs posted, make sure you have a job hiring webpage. You know, I can't tell you how many times I see, and this is DEO members and non-DEO members, they don't have a careers tab on their website. And so how am I, as a potential prospective employee, going to know if you're a fit for me or not if I don't have that? I don't really care about the procedures you do. They all look the same to me if I'm especially a non-clinician. And so what type of applicant tracking system do you have? It's so crucial that, you know, we spend all this time and money and effort getting good leads for potential new hires. And yet a lot of times people just don't keep track of the resumes or the candidates. And that's on us. And so, you know, from an applicant tracking system, what that means is that you're taking in every single resume that comes your way. You're going through some type of system where there's a numerical value assigned at whether it's the phone interview stage, the group interview stage, or the one-on-one interview stage. And then professional interviewing. You know, you were at one of our DEO events where there were about 150 people in the audience, and the main stage speaker asked us how many of us are professionally trained in HR. Maybe two hands out of 150. And these are all key decision makers and some very large groups that were in the audience. That's a scary thing, and that's the reality. And so what is your training system? So I shared this book with Amal, but I found it. So it's this book called Who, and it's by Smart and Street are the two authors. And I'd highly recommend that all of you on this webinar go out and get yourself a copy. Don't get the audiobook. You can't take notes in an audiobook. Get the actual physical copy. And it's got all of the cheat sheets and all of the scripts and templates that you'll ever need to create what I'm showing you right now.
And you know, you're so right. If you go back just a second, I really love the word accelerator because people are your accelerators. Every time we've made the right hire at Patient Prism, and every time I've talked to an executive in dentistry about as soon as they hired the right person for the right position, things accelerated, right? And it's almost the gratification. You may not see it the first month, the second month, but there's times when you see, oh my goodness, the impact on your bottom line and your top line is measurable. So people are your accelerators, absolutely. And the other thing, but besides personal contacts and position marketing, there's experts available for your C-suite recruiting. You know, we have a joint friend, John Fiddler, and it was a great job at really looking at your needs and what's required for that position and finding the right personality and the right fit for your organization. So there's help out there to do executive recruiting in this space.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more, and definitely recommend John Fiddler, especially for the non-clinical positions that are really difficult to fill in dental. So that brings us to our fifth principle, which is a systems culture is crucial. And so what do I mean by that, Amal? It's 94% of your problems are systems issues. Only 6 are people problems. And that's according to W. Edwards Deming. And when you take a look at what we've done in the DEO, so that flow chart, that's a little bit of an eye chart, that's actually one of our members' perfect patient experience. They've mapped every single step out by position, what each position needs to do. And that checklist in the middle is an example of, for example, an OSHA compliance safety checklist. If you don't have these flow charts and these checklists mapped out, then really any results you get are good enough. I mean, you're not being intentional about what foundation you're setting for your group practice or even your solo practice. And ultimately, this takes a lot of work. This is not easy to map out. It's not easy to create and then to QA check several times a year to make sure it's still relevant. But I don't know how you would run any business, not just in dental, but any business in any vertical market without having systems and checklists and SOPs. Would you agree with that, Amal?
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason why you joined the DEO, right? Because you get to meet people who are doing amazing things like this, right? I actually was at one of your conferences and I met somebody who is part of the DEO. He's actually out of Portland. He's got an amazing DSO out there. And he walked me through this entire flow chart, which looks similar but not the same to the mapping of the buyer's journey. And in this case, the buyer is the patient. And it was so amazing because they looked at every single handoff that happened. And Margaret, we talked about her earlier, McCugan, she talks about, every time a problem happens when the intersection of people and processes, right? And that's where the handoff is where the problem occurs. So when you map things like this, you're able to really figure out at what point did something break down. And as you're trying to build a platform across multiple offices, if you don't have this mapping done, it becomes very, very hard to pinpoint. And then all you're doing is managing by gut, and all you're doing is putting out fires. So this is the reason, number one reason to join the DEO is this exact insight that you get from members who are doing this amazing work in building processes and platforms.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. It's just too difficult to figure it out for yourself. And as we mentioned earlier in the webinar, it's not a one size fits all. If you have the playbook for one DSO, that's good for one DSO and not for all. And so you don't have to.
I have a question before you go
on.
Absolutely. Actually, an attendee asked this question do you guys, who creates the SOPs in terms of all your groups? Is it somebody inside the organization or you hire an external consultant? What's that process like?
That's a great question. So it's a combination. Our faculty I think you could agree, Amal, that they are the who's who within the DSO space. So a lot of our best practices come from that charter faculty group. But then also we have DEO members that by their own accounts are very, very well run. Some of them are better run, as Amal said, at 3 locations than some 20 location groups.
Sure.
So they've gone through the painstaking process through trial and error of creating their own perfect patient experience and what has to happen at each and every touch point. And so what happens is you get this 120 tribe, if you will, this mastermind that is 60% GPs, 40% specialists, and they're converging on what works for you. Let me take a look at your secret sauce. I'll show you mine. And at the end of the day, all of these playbooks are useless if you don't have the team to execute.
Correct.
Right? I could give you the #1 DSO in the nation and give you their secret sauce, and you won't be able to implement it if you don't have the infrastructure and the team.
It's really not about the idea, it's all about execution, right? And many consultants from Drucker onwards have said that. But what I love about the DEO is this abundance mindset, right? People are willing to share their secret sauces. It's no longer secret because they realize when they share that their experience, they're learning from others. And the mindset is truly not scarcity. And that's why I love coming there, because I have come to these conferences and I've taken some things back and implemented them in my non-dental organization, my software company, because everybody was open and abundant about sharing what they did right, what they did wrong. And the mastermind, especially the mastermind sessions you do, are just unbelievable because they open your doors into like, oh my God, look at this practice that does 365 days dentistry or 7-to-7 models or medical dental, medical optometry. There's so much you get to learn from all these innovative leaders that are using all these ideas to really help them serve patients better in ways that we never imagined before in the past.
Absolutely. And it brings me to Emmett Scott again. Says it best. He says, Darin, if at 20 plus locations as a formidable DSO with 400 employees, if what I have is so secret and I can share it with someone that has 5 locations and they can replicate it, it wasn't that special to begin with. And so at the end of the day, there really are no secrets. All of the questions that we have been answered. It's just a matter of execution.
Absolutely.
And so the reality is you don't have to make the same mistakes others have made. The best thing you could do in any industry is to find the people that have aced the exam that are 2 and 3 steps ahead of you. You know, you might not get too much from someone that is doing $1 billion in revenue that has 800, 900 locations because they don't remember how life was when they were your size. So you're best served finding people that are at your level or slightly ahead. And then at the end of the day, this is the one slide that I want to leave with all of you that leaves an indelible impression in all of you. You can do it yourself, and it's probably not advisable. You need to create an intentional support network, whether it's the DEO, whether you belong to another group, or whether you're shopping at another group. I would highly advise you go it with someone else. Not only is it too hard to do it yourself, it's just a lot more fun when you're around like-minded thought leaders. So get your intentional support network, grow yourself, then grow your team, and then grow your business, and do it in that order. I just don't know any other way that you would want to do it. There is no secret playbook and you can't go it alone. Would you agree with that, Amal?
Yeah, it is. And, you know, it does get lonely at the top when you're trying to fight these fires yourself and you've got so much going on every single day and your hygienist didn't show up, and your assistant didn't show up. You've got all sorts of issues that you have to deal with every day. And sometimes having a support network of your peers who are facing the same challenges that you're facing. It's mentally satisfying and it feels nice to be part of a group that truly cares about your success. And that's what I've observed at the DEO is people want to abundantly give their knowledge, and they have aced their exam, but not without any problems. Everybody goes through their own set of failures. And if you can learn from those and not make the same mistakes, then really that's the value. Darin, there's a question from a participant here that
Sure.
I'd like you to answer. And the question is, how do you participate in the masterminds?
That is a great question. I'm actually going to share that with you in a couple of slides.
Okay, wonderful. There's another question, which is, is saying, are there physical conferences or phone conferences, seminars? What's the nature of your engagement with your audience, which is DEO members? My guys meet physically, do phone stuff, webinars. What's all involved?
That's a great question. So really think of the DEO as we have an application process and we don't triage practices. So if someone's coming to us and they're saying, you know, we're just in the red, we don't know what to do, we're not a fit, I usually refer them to a boots on the ground consultant because we're not boots on the ground. By the time you come to the DEO, as a GP, you're usually doing about 1.7 to 1.8 million per four wall. And then if you're a specialist, you're doing closer to 3 million. And so that gives you an idea. If the average solo location is doing 850 per year, they're doing quite a bit more. So what they're looking for is, to your point, Amol, these are the cream of the crop owner entrepreneurs, whether they're one location scaling to two, or they have more than a couple and they want to be a true DSO. They just don't want to be doing it on their own island. And so they're looking for an organization that is not judgmental, that doesn't feel like there's just one way of doing it. And there's absolutely, to Amol's point, zero ego in the room at these conferences. So it's very weird for dentists that have gone through dental school, especially the ones that are just out, because they're used to such a competitive environment that they're not used to someone that's very successful or a bunch of people that are very successful sharing openly, this is the way to do it. And so that's one way. But what I would recommend is, prior to even considering joining the DEO, you should definitely consider coming to a live event, because that really will put the belief in, oh, okay, I'm in the right space. And you'll know whether you want to scale a group after coming to one of our events or whether you should just stay where you're currently at. And there's no harm in staying where you're at. For some folks, if you're 1 or 2 or 3 locations taking home close to, 750 to $1 million a year, that's a pretty good life. Scaling is not for everybody. And if you do scale, you should just do it and stack the deck in your favor by getting connected to the right organizations, whether it's DEO or someone else. And so what I wanted to say is, with connecting and masterminding in mind, this isn't your ticket to come spend time with us. So every single year, this is the longest standing, and it's become really the tip of the spear emerging markets event in the dental industry. So June 27th through the 29th at the JW Marriott in Phoenix is usually about 500 to 600 attendees. And the theme is the future of dentistry, but it really is more encompassing than that. It's got everything. This is, if you can go to just one event this year, I'd highly recommend you come to this one. And as a special promotion to everyone on the call, we're going to give you an added bonus being part of the Patient Prism family. So instead of $795, you're very welcome. Instead of $795, it's just going to be $695. That early bird registration expires March 31st, so act quickly and just use Prism in the promo code to take advantage of that.
We appreciate. I have been to several of these conferences, and I have come out changed. It's way more than the value. The value is multiple times of what you would spend. The connections that you will make with the right people who are more than willing to guide you in your journey. And not everybody, you're right. I appreciate you saying that not everybody has to be a DSO, but it's the mindset, right? It's the growth mindset. And what I remember Mark Cooper talking about this a few years ago. It's how do you get into that growth mindset? And whether you're one location or 5, understanding what it takes to get the right people on the bus and build processes that will allow you, you don't have to become the next Heartland, and that's fine. What matters is are you fulfilling your professional and financial and personal dreams by building an organization that you can be proud of, and that gives you the quality life, the work-life balance that you need while fulfilling all your financial dreams. And really, I've benefited a lot from coming to DEO, although I don't own dental practices. the mastermind sessions, the camaraderie. I encourage, if you go to those events, seek people out. They are more than willing to help you. So ask them questions, sit down with them, go to coffee with them, go to dinner with them. There's a lot of opportunity. Don't be shy. Say, hey, what are you guys doing tonight? I want to go to dinner. And sometimes you'll find I've been in dinner with like 50 people and for 5 hours and learning from everybody else that's just talking about how to really grow their businesses and serve patients better. A lot of great talk is not about EBITDA. By the way, you go to DEO and it's not just about profits. They're talking about better patient care, better patient experience, better business models, newer business models. So it's an incredible event that I do recommend all you guys and take advantage of it. Thank you for offering these participants a great coupon code. Definitely welcome you guys and seek us out. We're more than happy to talk to every one of you when you come there.
Absolutely. And so I guess at this point in the presentation, I'd like to open it up for questions or anyone that has typed in a question in the chat box. Amol, I'm going to lean on you to read those off if there are any.
There are, let's see. There is a new question. There's a question that one of the questions was, is there levels at the DEO? How do you join them? How do you join to become, when you come to the conference, you're like, man, this is the organization for me. What's the next step? Is that a membership? What's involved?
That's a great question. If this is something that resonates with you and you don't want to wait until the summit, we'd still love you to come out. If you go to that website on the bottom, deodentalgroup.com, you don't have to do any of the summit summer on the bottom. That'll take you straight to our website. And you'll see in the upper right-hand corner, there's an apply tab. There's no obligation. It just asks you to fill out a quick interest and application form. It takes all but 10 minutes to do both. And then it'll schedule a direct link to my calendar and I'll spend 30 minutes with you. And really the purpose of that call is your objectives are my objectives. There is no pressure to join the DEO. It's really just to find out if you're a fit for our group. And if you're not, I can tell you I'm connected well enough in the DSO space where I'm going to point you in a different direction. That's going to be more of a fit for what you're looking for.
And if nothing else, Darin's the guy to know in this business for sure. He will point you in the right direction. He has done that for me several times when I needed somebody to hire. He pointed me in the right direction. So he's a great resource and abundantly shares his connections with everyone. The next question I have, Darin, for you, is the DEO good for dentists with one practice who's thinking about expanding?
That's a great question. For the DEO, we really have two tracks, and this is something that a lot of people aren't familiar with, is we have a track for 1 to 3 location owners that are right at the edge of that cliff and they want to jump, but they aren't confident yet. And
Sure.
Then we have another track for, it's a 1-year program for those that are ready to scale. And so the one for the 1 to 3 owners that aren't quite sure, it's an 8-week program that's done via correspondence. Yes. And so it's a combination like Khan Academy with mastermind calls. And over the course of 8 weeks, we guarantee you 3 things. You're going to learn how to optimize your current location or locations. You're going to learn all of the changes that we hear of in the group practice space. And you're going to learn whether or not you should even scale any further.
That's great. The next question is really about how do you facilitate dentists to grow their own organizations? And you said earlier a little bit about, if you have some fires you're trying to put out and you really want to go to the next level, and maybe DEO may not be the right fit at that point, do you kind of have resources to recommend that could help these organizations kind of solve some of their problems and then come on board?
So that's some of our charter faculty members, like you mentioned, Margaret McGuckin. For those of you that don't know Margaret, she was the founding COO of Clear Choice Dental Centers. She basically helped mastermind a lot of their standard operating procedures, and they are like the original all-on-4 group, right? Then you've got Dee Fisher, who's another fantastic executive in the dental space, one of the original regionals for one of the longest standing DSOs in the nation. And so we typically usually refer to our own faculty that have experience, because what you want is someone that's actually traveled that path. You want a travel guide, right? That's going to go on that path many, many times ahead of you, not a travel agent that may not have gone to the destination that you're trying to book. And so the DEO is a combination of live and virtual events as well. So again, you're getting feedback from other dentists that own groups that might be 2 or 3 steps ahead of you. And to us, that's just the best way to do anything, is to find that support network.
And absolutely, the faculty is so stellar. They will just tell you the answer right away. They'll tell you, no. I mean, you can tell them a complex problem, and in like 5 minutes, people like Margaret and Dee and several other guys will just basically break down your problem, and then like, oh my God, that's the right way to think about it. So there's a lot of help with the faculty to kind of put you in the right direction, even if they're not kind of doing that personally. There's a lot of resources that can be obtained to kind of solve some of your issues.
Absolutely.
One of the things that a lot of people ask about is, how do you pick the people who come there? There's a lot of vendors who come to the DEO, and I know you kind of curate them now to picking the ones that have had the most impact on the industry. So a lot of folks have. So what type of vendors do you see at these DEO events?
That's a great question, Amal. And you having participated in that capacity, you know it really is the cream of the crop, third-party relationships. So what I saw, so the last 5 years, not coming from the dental space, I just went to every single DSO show unimaginable. And so you get to understand from a reputation standpoint who's great, who could be better. And at the end of the day, what I found was that most of these organizations that were putting the dental shows together did not care how many of the same type of exhibitor that they had. It was just a pure pay for play. And so when I partnered up with the DEO, I said, we're going to make it something special, something that's never been done. And so typically you won't find more than 2 or 3 of the same type of company exhibiting. And they are normally number 1, 2, and 3 in their respective categories. And so that being the case, I feel like it makes for a premium experience. We limit the number of exhibitors that we could go into the hundreds if we wanted to and really be profitable. But the reality is we usually keep it to about 46 exhibiting companies, and they're the best of the best at what they do. And so there's always a waiting list. It always sells out. Our June Summit was sold out in late November of last year. And it's because we've created this very intentional experience for both the exhibiting businesses, for the attendees, and for us, quite frankly, and our members.
Another question from a participant is, do you guys provide, is there a buying group that you guys created to help the practices, save money on various things?
Yep. It's funny, when we first started out and we didn't necessarily want to go down that Smile Source path. I love Trevor. It's just that wasn't our niche. We wanted to focus on creating education and connections through the mastermind. I can tell you that's something we're actively looking at, and that we are talking to the usual suspects, if you will, and I'll leave it at that.
The DEOdentalgroup.com is a great place to go, and I recommend you come to Phoenix this year. It's a beautiful place, and it really is an amazing time. So thank you, Darin, for this amazing webinar. We're looking forward to seeing you shortly at the ADSO in San Diego. And thank you all participants for spending your evening in the middle of your bedtime routine. You guys came and listened to us, so thank you very much. And we'll look forward to hearing from you, hearing your questions, and hopefully meeting you in June in Phoenix. So thank you again. Have a great night. Thank you again.
Thank you, Amal. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Bye.